Happy Friday. You are here for an Augie event called Postpartum Prep. So whether you are in that postpartum period, whether you are pregnant, I just cleared the fourth trimester, so this is like fresh in my mind, but I definitely would have wanted to attend a workshop like this to prepare if I was having my first. So welcome, welcome. If you wouldn't mind just dropping in the chat where you are tuning in from, what stage that you are in. It always helps our speakers to kind of contextualize and just know the audience a little bit. It's also completely optional if you would like to turn on your camera or not. But if this is your first Augie event, welcome, welcome. We are the #1 parenting community for you to find recommendations, learn from experts. I'm a second time parent, but I found it so helpful supporting me with my second pregnancy. And so just really glad that you're here. This event is being recorded. Don't worry about taking notes. You can reference this back later, share it with your friends, invite them to the Augie community. But without further ado, would love to introduce our speaker, Amina. And we'll drop her business URL into the chat. And so she is coming from or representing, Nurture Postnatal Care. And so let's just jump into it. So Amina, take it away. She has some slides and we'll have time at the end for Q&A. So feel free to drop the questions in the chat, hold on to them until the end. We'll definitely reserve some time and we will go until the hour if you're able to stay that long, everybody. So let's get into it. Amina.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. So happy to be here today. My name is Amina Charles, and I am the co-founder and CEO of Nurture Postnatal Care. Welcome to Postpartum Prep. So I'll give you some background on myself. So I have about 15 plus experience in kind of marketing and leadership at Amazon, Oscar Health, and Zendesk. But most importantly, I am a mother. I am fresh out of postpartum with my second. I have a 3-month-old and a 2-year-old. I was really inspired to start Nurture after my experience with late-term pregnancy loss in March 2022. So what we do here at Nurture is that we provide education, resources, in-home recovery support for all birthing parents in the postpartum recovery period. And we'll soon be expanding with a marketplace that we're developing to support families from first period all the way through menopause. So our focus is really democratizing postpartum care to ensure every family has access to the support that they deserve. As a parent and freshly in postpartum, I will say, because I want to emphasize that postpartum lasts forever. The experience that you have immediately after birth impacts how you feel in menopause, impacts how you feel for the rest of your life, which is why we focus so closely on that. In addition to that, there's also such a care gap, which we'll talk about later on. So I am excited to be here with you all and ready to dive into postpartum prep, and we'll take questions at the end. I'll have resources for you all. Really looking forward to this presentation today. All right, so why does postpartum prep matter? I'm sure you guys have spent all of your resources kind of prepping for the pregnancy, the delivery, the baby. But again, postpartum lasts forever. And what we know now is that there's a critical care gap in the postpartum period, and that's where 52% of maternal deaths occur, which a lot of people aren't already aware of. So postpartum planning really reduces the readmissions, it speeds your recovery, and improves family well-being. So how well are you going to prepare for your postpartum? Don't just focus on the birth. Don't just focus on the baby shower. Really ensure that you're investing in your postpartum recovery, investing in the resources that you may need for your postpartum recovery, and then as well as doing your due diligence to understand what is available to you if you don't already have access to extensive resources. And that's what we're going to touch on today. So the postpartum care gap, what we see in the postpartum period is that you'll get 14 prenatal visits and only one postpartum visit in those 6 weeks. A lot can happen in 6 weeks, right? So we know that we'll see a lot of perinatal mood disorders, postpartum hemorrhages, and sometimes by the time you get back to your provider, whether it's I'll say specifically an OB, not so much a midwife, those complications have already occurred. You're already having challenges. And then they send you home, they give you like this paper essentially, which asks you, how are you feeling? Which your brain is already scrambled. You're having brain fog. It's like, I don't know. You're just kind of checking off stuff, right? And what we're here today to do is to really ensure that the care that you receive is not just that paper in your 6-week checkup, right? To ask you, how are you feeling? In which case, a lot of the times you don't even know how you're feeling and you don't even know how to respond to that. So we want to ensure that, again, you feel prepared and you don't get sandbagged. So 40% of birthing people actually never even attend their postpartum follow-up. And I'm sure a lot of that has to do with the fact that you just feel so overwhelmed that the fact that you now have to go see a doctor 6 weeks after you gave birth is actually a bit much, right? And so most people just kind of skip it because they don't think that it's important. And this gap in turn causes missed complications and missed support. So these are some of the realities of what a lot of people are dealing with in postpartum. So one in 5 new mothers experience postpartum depression. We know that postpartum anxiety rates may be even higher in the postnatal period. And the recovery is not just the physical, it's emotional, it's mental. And many parents underestimate the practical support that they actually need to ensure that they have a healthy postpartum recovery. And this is for the birthing person and their partner. So today we're going to tackle the 3 pillars of recovery in postpartum: physical, emotional, and practical. So in terms of physical recovery essentials, when we talk about postpartum, the body has gone through a significant event, right? Whether it's a vaginal delivery or a cesarean section, your body has gone through this tremendous event where you lose a lot of fluids. Your hormones have changed in a short amount of time. We know that there's a dip in hormones immediately after birth. So these are kind of the things that you really want to focus on in those first 2 to 3 weeks. I really would say 40 days postpartum, which is the standard in other countries. Obviously, a lot of people aren't aware in the United States, postpartum is one of the most overlooked stages of pregnancy and recovery. In other countries and other cultures, this is the part of the pregnancy that is actually the most important, because this is where you need the most support and the body is so deficient. So warming, nutrient-dense foods. So we're talking about congees, we're talking about stews, we're talking about soups. Anything that's going to be gentle on your digestive system is what's really going to support you in the postpartum period. Remember, all of your organs are essentially pushed up as your uterus is growing. So if you're eating something heavy or something that's not really nutritionally dense, that can put a lot of strain and stress on your digestive system and your organs overall in postpartum. So you really want to focus on things that are easy to digest: soups, stews, broths, oatmeal, congee, etc. Some of the most common needs in the postpartum period are peri bottles. If you're not familiar with those, they kind of look like an upside down, I would say, like douching item, and it really helps to kind of alleviate discomfort if you have any stitching, if you have any tearing, if you have any lacerations. You could use witch hazel, you can use padsicles, which are essentially frozen sanitary napkins, and you can put them in your freezer, put them in your undergarments or your mesh underwear that you may receive in the hospital setting, and that will kind of alleviate a lot of discomfort in your perineum after birth. Compressions and binders. So one thing I will note with the compressions and binder products is that you want to ensure that you're getting full back support. We're not talking about belly binders that just kind of bind the lower abdomen. You want something that supports you all the way up to the rib cage and down. And that will also help to kind of alleviate any inflammation and kind of help to shrink the uterus as well. But you want to ensure that you're using a compression binder that's a medical device, right? Not something that you would use, like I said, a lot of people commonly see on Amazon that people use as waist trainers. That's not something you would want to be using in the postpartum period. Gentle daily movement is essential. And when we talk about gentle daily movement, in the first week postpartum, you really should be indoors, laying down, resting, focusing on your breath, bonding with your baby, ensuring that your milk supply comes in. We really don't want to see a lot of movement, especially strenuous movement within the first week postpartum. You're still bleeding, your body's still recovering, your organs are still settling. So really you want to focus on gentle breaths, again, breath work, expanding the rib cage, right? Slight yoga movements, nothing that's going to cause you any discomfort. The most important thing is that you're listening to your body. I know for me, it was very difficult for me to lay on my stomach, like I would say the first 4 weeks postpartum. Some people say that works for them, but again, the most important thing is that you're listening to your body, you're being gentle with your body, you're giving your body grace, and the movement is nourishing, right? If it feels stressful, if it feels like you're overreaching a bit or you're straining yourself, that's not something you should be doing. You should immediately speak with your physician or if your physician, your OB, or your midwife. And sleep is medicine. This is probably the most essential thing, and it's the most difficult thing to get in the postpartum period, especially if you don't have the resources or you don't have a support person that's consistent. But sleep is paramount. My first postpartum experience was a bit challenging. I did have a postpartum doula. I did have my husband home. It was kind of like in COVID, my first child, I should have said my second child, I delivered in March 2023. So we were all still kind of at home. No one was in the office, but we still felt sandbagged. And I say all that to say that even as someone that had information, I was sandbagged. I did not get enough sleep. The postpartum doula really wasn't a fit for our family and the evening postpartum doula that we had. And it was very difficult for me to kind of release a lot of the control that comes from my external experiences, kind of like in corporate, et cetera. And when it comes to postpartum, all that stuff goes out the window, right? I was pumping colostrum and trying to figure out how much colostrum the baby was going to get. None of that stuff needed to be done, right? It was a lot of stress that I was putting on myself that prevented me from getting sleep, that prevented me from eating properly, that prevented me from receiving the help that I needed. And it was very stressful in my first postpartum recovery period. Now, this second time around, I'm 3 months out and I'm on a Zoom call. That was not me the first postpartum period. It was very challenging. I had a lot of brain fog, a lot of issues with kind of iron, and that's what was causing a lot of the brain fog. So basically, my blood hadn't completely built back up to what it was in the prenatal period. So my emotional and mental recovery was a bit more challenging the first time around. This time around, releasing that control and really giving myself grace and allowing myself to get the necessary help, food, and rest that I needed was paramount in this postpartum recovery. So I really want to stress that for you all. And nourishment matters. So when we talk about nourishment, I know a lot of us have kind of seen those photos on Instagram where people will immediately out of delivery, you'll see like the pancakes and the hamburgers. And it's like, yeah, now I get to eat all this stuff. I really want to stress to you that your stomach is literally in your diaphragm. And to eat that much food, and especially food, again, that's not nutrient dense, immediately postpartum, that is very detrimental to your digestive system. And again, your overall recovery. And no judgment if that's something that you needed to kind of feel more like yourself, or just you wanted to kind of get that as like I would say a meal, a recovery meal that kind of made you feel like you accomplished something, because it's like almost like after a run, right? You did this big thing and it's like, no, give me all the things. Like I want the smoothie, the hamburger, the hot dog, like the ice cream sundae. I definitely feel you on that, but believe me when I tell you that's the last thing you should be doing after you initially deliver. So when we talk about nourishment, we're talking about kind of the essential nutrients, minerals that you need to support tissue repair, right? So I had a vaginal birth, and I'm going to be completely transparent about my experience. I just want to be clear so everyone knows kind of what my experience was and like essentially what I navigated then and what I'm navigating now. So when we talk about tissue repair, right? So your muscles, if there were any lacerations, any of those things require repair. And the minerals and kind of nutrients that support that are like iron, iodine, and protein. Protein. Specifically kind of grass-fed meats. We're not talking about processed meats, right? So not like deli meat or anything like that. hydration and warm foods. And the emphasis on hydration is not just water, it's electrolytes, right? So watermelon juice, coconut water, if you can add a little bit of sea salt to your water, that will support your hydration. Breast milk is 87% water. So that is essential if you are breastfeeding. And even if you aren't breastfeeding, having that hydration supports your tissue repair. And it also helps with mental clarity as well. If you're not able to if if you're not able to kind of have someone in the home, let's say a partner that's cooking, then meal delivery and meal trains will reduce stress significantly. So when we talk about meal delivery, again, it's important that we focus on the nourishment piece. I would recommend Chio, which was really phenomenal for me in my postpartum period. Um, their food is really rooted in traditional Chinese medicine, and it's all evidence-based, and they've done a lot of research as it relates to how these foods will support your postpartum recovery. And then if you're not able to do a meal delivery service like a Chio, then there's meal trains, right? And meal trains are basically signing your support people up for different times that they're going to deliver food, right? So if and this is over the course of the 6 week period, which is the most important. Those first 40 days are super important to your recovery. And again, postpartum is forever. But when we talk about those first 40 days, those are super critical because again, that's where the most complications and deaths occur. So if you can assign people a meal train where they're coming to you, dropping off food, they don't even have to come in the house. They can like drop it off at your doorstep because again, postpartum can sometimes be overwhelming and you don't need all those people in your space initially. Additionally, seaweed broth, that's something that was really helpful for me. There's a brand called Oma that I would really, really recommend. Again, traditional evidence-based. So seaweed broth is something that a lot of Korean mothers and families use in the postpartum period. It helps to replenish minerals. It keeps you hydrated. And again, helps to support tissue repair. And this is standard kind of in Asian, Indian, and African cultures is that you have nourishment, you have support, you have community, you have care in the postpartum period. Unfortunately, our community has to be purchased in kind of Western society. And we don't necessarily have the aunts and uncles and cousins to kind of come in and support us. We don't have people to come and bring meals for free all the time. So in that instance, there are things that you can utilize, like Chio and Oma to kind of support you with the nourishment that you need in postpartum. So now we're going to talk about emotional and mental health. So 1 in 7 birthing people is diagnosed with PPD and many more go undiagnosed. So when we talk about kind of the warning signs, right? A lot of those warning signs are persistent sadness, anxiety, hopelessness, difficulty bonding with your child. Some of the things that you can do, if you don't have a mental health professional, I would always recommend to kind of ensure that you have that person on standby because you really don't know what you're going to experience in the postpartum period, especially if it's your first time having a child. So some of the protective practices that you can do if you don't already have a mental health professional on standby is kind of therapy, of course, journaling, peer support, daily check-ins. And again, it doesn't have to be always a phone call. It can be a text message. It could be a group chat and build that safe people list before you give birth. That's probably one of the biggest things that I would recommend. When I gave birth to my daughter back in 2023, I think I had a concept of that, but then once postpartum came, it occurred to me that I didn't have that list. And the people that I thought were going to be the most supportive were in fact not the most supportive, right? So I think it's super important to understand kind of who has navigated the experience previously, who has been kind, who has poured into you, who has encouraged you throughout your pregnancy. Make that list before birth. And if you can, make a group chat, and have those people encourage you. Because I think for me, one of the biggest things that kind of helped me through that first postpartum experience and this one was the encouragement that I received from my close friends who are also mothers, right? And we all kind of had children at the same time. But the most important thing was that they saw me, they understood me, and they were able to provide the encouragement and support that I needed in postpartum because sometimes a lot of the challenges that you experience is people just not acknowledging what you're going through, not encouraging you even if you feel down, Sometimes you want to hear, I'm a great parent, I'm a great mom. And those things are super important in the postpartum period when you are having that dip in hormones and you can start to kind of feel sad or depressed or anxious, especially if it's your first pregnancy. So let's talk about practical support systems. So this is kind of the framework that I use with a lot of our clients is really we need to focus on four things. What you need to do, what you need to delay, what you need to delegate, and most importantly, what you need to delete in the postpartum period. Okay. So I think a lot of the time, again, like there's so much emphasis on the baby shower, what the baby needs, and all the energy and effort is kind of put into that period. And then when postpartum comes, we all get sandbagged and no one knows what to do. We're kind of all scrambling. So, in terms of kind of how we can lay this framework out, what you should start with is focus on what actually matters for your recovery. Bonding with the baby, rest, healing, nourishment. I truly implore you to put together a list. Well, actually, in terms of if you're having a baby shower, whether it's your first or second child, there's registries like Little Honey Money or Be Her Village where you can request postpartum recovery funds instead of just focusing on the baby. Because I assure you, the baby doesn't need much. My son is 3 months old. All he's doing is sleeping and breastfeeding right now. There's not much really happening. Knowing what I know now, I would have just done that the last time around. I did that the second time around. Just do a registry for yourself because if mom is not okay, if the birthing parent is not okay, baby's not okay. The baby cannot take care of themselves. So if you have to focus on taking care of you and focus on what truly matters. All the diapers and all that stuff is cute, but that's not going to save you in the postpartum period. So things that you can delay, push back on non-urgent tasks. So house projects, social obligations, admin tasks. Let me tell you, the last 2 months of this pregnancy, I delivered my son in June. I stopped everything. And some people were like, oh my God, like you're only 7 months, you can still, no. Understand what your capacity is and just use no as a complete sentence. Because I think a lot of the times, there's this dichotomy where it's like, oh, well, if you're pregnant, you're not disabled. We're not saying that you're disabled. What we're saying is you're going into a different phase and stage, right? You're going into the nesting stage and then eventually the birthing stage, right? And you want to prep yourself mentally. You want to prep yourself emotionally. And what you need to do in that time is really be focusing on the things that you need. And that's why you see a lot of moms will kind of start nesting, organizing, getting things together. You can't juggle all the different things when you're trying to pull all your energy back to yourself so you can ensure that you conserve it for birth because you do need it. Birth is more mental than physical, quite frankly. And so it's so important that you use no as a complete sentence. Like really try to mitigate a lot of the admin tasks, any of those things that kind of a lot of moms get caught up in prior to delivering. Now, the next stage is the delegation stage. And this is something that can sometimes be challenging for a lot of people, myself included. Share your responsibilities with your support circle. Meals, laundry, childcare, errands. If you don't have a partner at home that can support you, identify those people early on that you can delegate those tasks to. As soon as you give birth, the last thing you're going to be thinking about is who's dropping off your child to daycare, who needs to run and do this, those aren't the things you want to be focusing on because all that's going to do is cause more stress, more anxiety. And the only thing you should be focusing on is resting and bonding with your baby. And then the last part of this framework is delete. And this is my favorite one because I love deleting. I love letting go. I love releasing. The daily deep cleaning, the unnecessary visits, the overcommitments, delete it. I implore you because you don't know what you don't know. When you're in the postpartum period and you're sitting in your diaper and you're bleeding and milk is leaking everywhere, the last thing you need is another thing on your plate. The last thing you need is an unnecessary, unannounced visit. And I encourage you all to be clear about those boundaries early on prior to birth, right? Who should be coming to visit, for how long, and how many people? And ensure that your partner or your doula or whoever your support person is understands those boundaries as well. Because sometimes, like, it's difficult to advocate for yourself when you're in pain. It's difficult to advocate for yourself when you're trying to figure out how to breastfeed your child. Like, those are the only things you should be focusing on. not trying to figure out how to host anybody, or if someone's like, well, when are you coming out? No, you'll see me when you see me. And I think it's so important. And I mean that, with all due respect. And because I've had this experience, you really need to be steadfast with your boundaries, because the only person that's going to suffer is you if you don't use no as a complete sentence. This is your care map. So this care map can include more or less depending on what your individual situation is. But this is what you want to identify early. And this is what you want to share with your partner. This is what you want to share with anyone in your support circle. So your partner, your doula, your family, your friends, your medical providers. I want to talk about medical providers because I think when we think about medical providers in the postnatal period, a lot of the energy and effort is kind of poured into the OBGYN, right? I want to, again, emphasize that an OB is there to support you leading up to the birth. After you deliver, they're not really going to support you in the postpartum period, right? That's not their area of expertise. They can refer you out, they can give some suggestions, but in turn, if you have any type of challenges, if you have any type of complications specific to pelvic floor therapy, sciatica pain, which I had, back pain, breastfeeding challenges, you now need to understand who are the providers that you need to go to support you in that. So when we talk about medical providers, if you need breastfeeding support, you need a lactation consultant. There are some hospitals that have lactation consultants on staff, and they'll help you immediately after birth with latching issues, milk supply, etc. Your OB cannot help you with that. If you have pelvic floor challenges, so incontinence, any type of lacerations, pain in your pelvic floor, your OB cannot help you with that. You need a pelvic floor therapist. If you're having challenges with your back, sciatica pain, anything like that, you need a chiropractor, you may need an acupuncturist, you may need a physical therapist or a physiatrist. There's so many different providers that a lot of folks are not aware of that are actually going to be part of your care map in the postnatal period, right? So I encourage you all to kind of do a bit more research in that, specifically with pelvic floor. So again, this is something that's standard of care in other parts of the world. You give birth to a child in places like France and Switzerland, you get a pelvic floor therapist. That's standard. That's not the case here, right? Typically, they'll wait until you have a problem, and then by then, sometimes it's too late, or you don't even realize you have a problem, and you kind of just living with it until it just gets worse and worse. And what we really want to do is be proactive about our care, have people advocating for us, because again, in the postpartum period, it can be overwhelming, and you don't necessarily always know what you need all the time. So this is the best time to do the prep. This is the best time to ask the questions. This is the best time to do the research and ensure that your support person, partner, doula, family, friends also know specifically what you may need and specifically what medical providers you may need as well. This is your essentials checklist for postpartum. So I know a lot of the time, again, we focus on the baby, and we really don't even know exactly what we will need in the postpartum period. And when we talk about kind of your wish list or things that you want to put on your baby registry, these are the things you should be thinking about. So the first thing is nourishment. So if you can add to your registry gift cards, if you can add cash donations, ensure that that's part of your registry. Rest, 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 rest. But what does that actually look like in practice? That looks like boundaries. No, I'm not doing that. No, I can't do that. No, I don't have the capacity for that. Nap schedules, sleep supports. So there are also sleep specialists and sleep therapists for children. Again, more providers that you will need to understand and know about in the postpartum period. If you want to have some support with sleep training, I don't like that term, but if that's something that you need support with, there are sleep specialists that can support you with that to ensure that you and your partner are getting the rest that you need so you can recover properly. Body care. Not being able to take a shower, you take it for granted, right? Being able to get up and kind of pop in the shower and feel clean. That is something that you are going to want more than anything in the postpartum period. Even in this my last postpartum experience, I had a home birth, which I'll share that story towards the end. I wanted to take a shower so bad, and you're not technically supposed to take a shower like straight after you deliver. You're supposed to kind of give yourself like 2 days or so. But I just wanted to shower, right? It feels good. It kind of feel you feel clean. All the stuff from birth is kind of off of you, and you just feel a little bit like yourself. Make sure that you have that support in that space. And what that looks like is a postpartum doula, a partner that knows that, hey, I want to shower at this specific time of day, or even if it's not that specific time of day, they have the capacity to make sure the child is cared for while you take a shower, because those little luxuries are what kind of pulls you back to yourself in the postnatal period, whether it's baths, massages, etc. Emotional checklists, support circles, therapy. There's obviously Auggie, which are parent communities, but therapy is super important, right? So ensuring that you have the support that you need prior to postpartum, and then if you find yourself having challenges, making sure you're identifying a therapist in the postpartum period that specifically has training in perinatal mood disorders, or postpartum mood disorders. Because I think that's one of the other things that I recognize is that a lot of therapists, yes, you may have the credentials, but you don't have the experience to support someone that's having challenges in the perinatal period. So ensuring that you identify those things beforehand so that you don't, again, get sandbagged in the postpartum period. Setting up those group chats, setting up those support circles, being a part of the Auggie community, et cetera. Those things are super, super important. And then when we talk about professional care, which I mentioned previously, so those are your providers. So who is your OB? Who is your midwife? How do you contact them? How do you communicate them in case of an emergency? Your lactation therapist, your mental health therapist, your chiropractor, pelvic floor therapy. Identify who you may want, who they already are ahead of time. So if you find yourself having challenges in those specific areas, your partner can reach out, book that appointment, and get you kind of set up pretty quickly. So this essentials checklist is really what you need to kind of support you in the postnatal period. Don't just focus on the cute baby clothes. If there are things that you can add to your registry that will support this essential checklist, I encourage you to add those. So now we're going to kind of get into the reflection part. So really kind of what is one insight you want to take away for your postpartum recovery? I will be sharing a worksheet in the chat that you all can follow up with. So that worksheet will allow you to input everything that you need to build out your postpartum recovery plan. I want to again encourage you all to understand that postpartum deserves just as much care as your birth. Postpartum is forever. And anytime that you feel that you're unsure or you don't know necessarily what to do, you can of course reach out to us directly. I have a slide which has our information, but I think it's really important that we kind of understand how important the postpartum period is, how it impacts us, not just during the birthing period, but also beyond the birthing period as we move in through menopause and other stages of our lives. So this is why it's so important that we invest in this period. This is why it's so important that we have the information, understanding, care, and support that we need in the postpartum period. Thank you all so much. I will be dropping in into the chat the worksheet that you all will be using. Feel free to fill that out directly with your partner based on kind of the information that you got here, and that will help you build out your postpartum recovery plan. It's something that you can refer back to after birth, later on, 6 months from now, and for future pregnancies. So we'll open it up for questions, and I will kick it back to Team Auggie.
Thank you, Amina. That was so comprehensive and super helpful. It sounds like we're kind of in a similar stage because I've got a 2.5-year-old and a 3-month-old. And yeah, I felt so much more confident the second time around. What I'm taking away, and I wish I had heard this with my first, postpartum is forever. Love that. I'm going to use that phrase. No being like an entire statement on its own. You don't have to
Yes.
explain why. It doesn't have to be so bad that and that's why I'm saying no. I totally feel that. I do know that I didn't get any questions in the chat, so I'll just kind of share some things that also help me just to Also give context on some of these things for other folks. So like Chio, I did use Chio, not their entire meal plan. I do believe that they have like a sample plan in case you are wanting to try it out. But now there's like so many meal delivery services. Chio is truly
Yes.
unique with the meal plans, for different stages if somebody was trying to conceive,
Hmm.
all the way to postpartum recovery. I can confidently say, like, I actually participated in a research study for them during pregnancy, but I had already planned to pay for their postpartum meals. And I think those 8 weeks that I was eating such diverse, nutrient dense meals truly helped me recover faster. But also my game plan, like when you were saying the baby doesn't really need that much, I
Hmm.
focused so much my first pregnancy on learning everything baby. And even though I had a
Yes.
girl first and then I was having a boy, I was like, I'm not going to learn anything about what I need for this baby. I know I can keep a baby alive, but like I need to make sure that I can keep myself alive because
Clearly, that
I
is
had
correct.
postpartum depression with my first.
Hmm.
And I also have ADHD. So I just wasn't prepared for like that mental load. And
Hmm.
thankfully, what I found to be most helpful were these support groups from Postpartum Support International. Um, I was meeting with a therapist who was specialized in perinatal mood disorders, but I still felt like talk therapy wasn't as helpful as I expected. It was truly
Hmm.
being in a room at
Yes.
odd hours of day, whenever it was convenient, being able to connect with people who get it. I don't have to explain why is it so hard. Like everybody's here because we can all use that support, and you don't have to wait until you're like hanging off the cliff and just like that's when you need a support group. I am proactive in scheduling these in advance now. And so totally love how you just really simplified a lot of things. Like 100%. I would have loved to hear all of this on the front end. And I only met with a pelvic floor physical therapist this week. So I'm
Hmm.
3 months postpartum with my second, but like I could have used it with my first. And it's taken so long. And that's like a whole nother story with the healthcare system. They don't always cover pelvic floor physical therapy. So that's also something where like as you're building your village, you're thinking about your care providers and folks, see what's covered by your insurance and like identify who's in network in advance because you have the capacity now before baby is out. Once baby's out,
Right.
you're sleep deprived, you've got that brain fog, right? What is the likelihood I'm going to have the energy to go research, read reviews, figure out who to go with? So 100% love everything that you shared. Amina, you mentioned the worksheet earlier. Is that a separate link or is that
Yes.
really obvious on your website?
Yes. I am going to share the link right now. Let me just get that for you all.
No problem. Does
And
anybody have any questions?
there'll also be resources in the doc as well. Let me just drop it in the chat. Oh,
Yeah, as you were sharing things, I was trying to like drop the links. I didn't know about the
uh,
seaweed, so hopefully I dropped the right link.
yes,
Um,
Oma is phenomenal. Let me see. Am I missing the chat? Okay, here we go. All right, so I just shared the link with everyone. So this is the postpartum plan worksheet.
ooh,
This is a living link. Feel free to share it with anyone that may need it. There'll be resources in here as well, but this doc in itself should be a living doc for you all as you develop your personalized care plan. So based on the information that you got today, kind of build this out. Feel free to reach out with any questions. I'll share our email as well. If you need any additional resources, I'm happy to help. I know we have a few more minutes, so I'll share my birth story so you can kind of hear more about my experience. So, and I think we probably have the same life at this point because I have my 2-year-old, 3-month old, just saw a pelvic floor therapist, all the things, right? So, gave birth June 13th. The interesting thing was that my original due date was apparently the end of June Allegedly, that's what my OB said, right? But something inside me was like, I don't know about this. But I was like, okay, maybe they know better than me. But intuition is very, very important as a mother. Please listen to your intuition because you know better than anyone else, right? So I was actually supposed to be on a podcast interview on the 13th of June. I was like, all right, that's my focus. And then the weekend, I'm like, I'll get my nails done and kind of get ready for this baby that's supposed to be coming. June 13th, my midwife texts me and she's kind of like, oh, how you feeling? I'm like, everything's great. I feel good. As soon as I hit the period and good, I felt the twinge, right? And if you've been through births before, it's kind of like, okay. But my first birth, it took 2 days for me to actually completely go through labor, et cetera. And it was very anticlimactic. That was my experience. I know everyone is different. I had 2 vaginal births at home. So this second vaginal birth at home with my son, I expected similar, right? Like I'll probably be in labor for 24 to 48 hours. For some reason, that did not happen. My child was an Amazon Prime baby and was the same day delivery. I had all these plans for the day, and that the kibosh was put on that very quickly. My contraction started at 7:30 a.m. By 2:45 p.m., I was holding a wall because I'm like, this baby is coming right now. I didn't have anything prepared. So again, like this is someone that has the experience. This is someone that has the information, and I was not prepared for my child to come because I thought he was coming a little bit later. I thought I had a bit more time, right? And I say all that to say is that I had the confidence in myself to know that I was going to be able to navigate this. My midwife kind of rushed over, literally was like in the middle of lunch, and she rushed over with the team. And I delivered a healthy baby boy at 6:44 p.m. I was not expecting it, but I still like emotionally felt ready, which is the most important thing is that emotionally, do you feel ready to bring this child into the world? Even if you don't have everything all together, even if you don't have everything organized the way that I would have liked it to be organized, I felt emotionally ready to receive this child, to care for this child, to love this child, and more importantly, ask for the resources that I need in that postpartum recovery period. So, because I had midwifery care, I think the biggest difference between that and care that you receive in a hospital setting is that my midwife was checking on me 24 hours after they physically come to the house and check on you, 24 hours after, 48 hours after, 2 weeks, 2 weeks after delivery, and then 4 weeks after delivery. So I had seen my midwife about 4 or 5 times before I even saw my OB. So I did my 6-week checkup with my OB, but I saw my midwife at least 4 times before I saw her. So if there were any challenges, any concerns, she could address them immediately versus me waiting until 6 weeks. And again, by then sometimes unfortunately for some people, it's too late. So I'm really grateful that I was able to access midwifery care, have the support that I needed, have a healthy pregnancy, and more importantly, feel much better this time around in the postpartum period. And again, it's still early postpartum. I'm only 3 months, not even 4 months out, right, from delivering my son. So I'm still kind of making sure that I'm pacing myself, making sure that I'm not taking on too much, making sure that I'm taking the right minerals, vitamins, staying hydrated. All those things are still super important because the postpartum shedding, again, so not to scare anyone if this is your first child, but hair coming out by the clumps is frightening. And if you don't recognize how that's directly attributed to the nourishment, the minerals, and more importantly, the emotional recovery that you receive, you again will feel blindsided. My first birth, I had a lot of postpartum shedding. This time around, I felt way more prepared. I was taking the right supplements and nutrients and everything before it got to that point because I literally was waiting until the hair was coming out and then I was trying to like play catch up, right? The body is significantly depleted from a mineral perspective, from a hydration perspective, and you have to ensure that you're combating that beforehand. So I was taking kind of beef liver capsules, drinking a lot of seaweed soup, and that really helped kind of mitigate the postpartum shedding. So happy to share any of those resources. I'll include a lot of that stuff in the worksheet, which I shared with you. And if you have any additional questions, feel free to reach out to our email, hello@nurturecare.co. Follow us on social at Nurture Postnatal Care. And just stay tuned for some other exciting updates for us. So it was a pleasure being here with you all. Thank you so much to Augie. Thank you so much to this community. And for anyone that has given birth or is about to give birth, just know that you are doing amazing. You're an amazing parent. And we have support systems like Augie here to ensure that you have a community that you need. So, really grateful to be here today.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much, Amina. Yeah, if this is your first Augie event, a lot of the things that Amina shared about, there are Augie events that we've had in the past, and you can access those recordings in the app. And then even ones coming up, if you're able to attend live, then the benefit is you can ask the speakers questions directly. But what's really great is I really felt more prepared with my second child because I was focusing on myself. There was a workshop that was for public for physical therapy, and that kind of primed me to think about after I give birth, being able to seek somebody out. We have had Chio and other brands come and speak. We've had sleep consultants come as well. So there's so much support. And if you are wanting somebody local to you in person, or you are wanting, a virtual like consult, definitely recommend joining the Augie app if you're not already plugged into that. And we've got specific groups that can be for like babies, people who are pregnant, people who've got toddlers. So it's just so great. Like you can tell when you are like that, the one who's nursing in the middle of the night, and you post something at 3 a.m. and somebody actually responds back at that same hour, you just know as another parent in that same season. So love being part of the Augie community. Thank you so much for joining our event today. Thank you, Amina, for just all the gems. Again, remember, no is a complete sentence. I hope
Yes.
that for everybody who is here, your upcoming birth is empowering, even if it's the first one. It doesn't have to be out of fear. It doesn't have to be, it just happens to you. You're feeling that way. Figure out like who do you need to have in your corner, in your village, to feel supported so that you can have the beautiful experience that you deserve, to be ready to bring this new life into the world. And it's kind of like when you're traveling, having that, oxygen mask on you first to be able to take care of others. So thank you everybody for joining on this Friday afternoon, and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.